Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Cold enough for you? I'm freezing. I'll probably be like this most of the time. So this morning's presentation is on the Lord's Prayer. If you all remember from, I think it was in September when I did the presentation on prayer in general, I had us sing the opening prayer, and I thought that that's a little too much torture to do to people twice in one session, in one RCIA session, so I won't have you sing this morning. Instead, our opening prayer, we can all say it together aloud. This is a prayer that is attributed to St. Augustine, the Bishop of Hippo, who was bishop, I don't know, what was it, like the 4th century, 5th century, somewhere around there?
Pretty early.
One of the great saints of the church. So let's pray this together. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Breathe in me, O Holy Spirit, that my thoughts may all be holy. Act in me, O Holy Spirit, that my work too may be holy. Draw my heart, O Holy Spirit, that I love what is holy. Strengthen me, O Holy Spirit, to defend all that is holy. Guard me then, O Holy Spirit, that I always may be holy. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, one of the difficulties coming into the church, especially if you were from no religious background beforehand, is that you don't really have any idea how to pray. That was one of the difficulties for me. I grew up in a church, but we really didn't pray all that much at home or anything like that, so I really didn't know how to pray. Luckily, anyway, sometimes prayer seems like this, right? You got the, Dear Jesus, blah! It all comes out, 15 minutes, you just blah, 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 blah. You don't stop to listen. You just let it all out. And sometimes you're like, I don't know, hey, how you doing, right? So, luckily, Jesus gave us the way to pray. And he gave it to us in Matthew chapter 6, I believe. And we call it the Lord's Prayer. And it is a good framework in which we can include all of our prayer. And thankfully, first of all, St. Augustine, again, said, run through all the words of the holy prayers in Scripture, and I do not think you will find anything in them that is not contained and included in the Lord's Prayer. So anything you want to pray for, pray about, can be included in the Lord's Prayer, in the different petitions of the Lord's Prayer. And luckily, I'm going to have a video here by Bishop Robert Barron, who's a much better speaker than I am, that he made when he was still a priest in Chicago. He is now the auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles. And this is about an 8-minute video, so hopefully the sound's working right.
I want to talk about the Lord's Prayer, the great Our Father that Jesus taught his disciples and through them all of us, because whenever we pray, the Church Father said we're doing a version of the Our Father. It's the prayer of prayers. Here's the first thing he observes. Now, this is Matthew's version in the Sermon on the Mount. In praying, do not babble like the pagans who think they'll be heard because of their many words. Now see, the problem here is not so much the many words in themselves. The problem is the assumption that God or the gods have to be persuaded. They're like a big city boss. I gotta go over and again and ask, and maybe in time I'll wear them down, or I'll change their minds. The God we're dealing with here in the great Christian tradition is not a God whose mind we change. Rather, prayer changes us. It's one of the most basic things that we have to know about prayer. If we go into it with the attitude of, I'm trying to change God's mind, I'm already on a bad spiritual plane. It's the prayer that changes us and brings us online with God. Now, here's how the great prayer, of course, begins. Our Father who art in heaven. That line, of course, is very evocative. Our Father, Abba. It's the language of intimacy, right? Closeness. God is a father to us. But who art in heaven? What's being signaled is the right understanding of God. God is that power, that reality, which can be neither grasped nor hidden from. If I can grasp God, I now start manipulating God. That's why I say he's in heaven. What's in heaven is that I can't control. But I can also run away from God. I can try to. That's why I call him our Father. Because in his intimacy, he can't be avoided. Now I'm in the right stance when I know that God is that which can be neither grasped nor avoided. Then I say, hallowed be thy name. Does that mean that his name isn't hallowed and that God should make it so? No, we're not trying to change God or change God's mind. What we're praying here is that we might hold God's name holy. Holy means set apart in the Old Testament. It means that God should be the highest value. It's again that idea of God being highest conduces to peace in us and among us. When together we hallow the name of God above all, peace will break out among us. When in my own heart I hallow God above all, then I become rightly ordered. So it's like the most basic thing we can ask for is, Lord, bring me online with you as the highest good. Then I say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Kingdom, very prominent word in the New Testament. There's a kingdom of this world. There's a prince of this world. The kingdom of this world is the way that we typically order things. It means according to injustice, according to hatred, according to violence, according to egotism, of me against you, us against them. That's the world, the cosmos in the Greek. It's the world in the negative sense. What Jesus is praying, is asking us to pray, is may the kingdom that obtains in heaven, that means the right order that obtains among the angels and saints in heaven, may that order of love, nonviolence, peace, other orientation, selfless love, may that order obtain here as there. You know, in the Mass, when we say, may our voices be one with theirs, we're talking about the voices of the angels as they sing the praise of God. We're praying that may we be harmonized among ourselves as the angels are in heaven. Your kingdom come here as there. That's what we're praying for. Your will be done. See, the world, as we know it, is a place where God's will is not done. My will is done. The will of powerful people is done. May your will be done. What you want, may that happen here. So think of all the social, political, economic, cultural implications of that prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. It's a very mysterious line. The phrase there for daily bread in the Greek is ton epiousion. And that word epiousios is used only here in all of Greek literature. They found it no other place in any of the literature of the Greek world. So what does it mean? It's mysterious. It's translated daily, and there's a long history behind that translation. What it means literally, ousia in Greek, means substance. Epiousion means super substantial. That's why when St. Jerome translated this in the Vulgate version, he called it panem superstantialum, super substantial bread. That's why for centuries, when people prayed this prayer, that's what they prayed for. Give us this day our super substantial bread. Now, food for eternal life is a way to render it perhaps a food of the final day, of the great day of eschatological fulfillment, yes. But of course, as Catholics, we're very struck by this term because we talk about the Eucharist, which is indeed that bread of heaven, the bread of angels. But we talk about it being transubstantiated bread, bread whose substance has been transfigured into the substance of Jesus' body and blood. And so indeed, super substantial bread. This is a prayer for the Mass. Give us each day your presence in the Eucharist. It's a prayer for communion with Christ. Then forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. You might say at the very heart of Jesus' teaching is forgiveness. Forgiveness. How many of our problems, personal, societal, cultural, are predicated upon the incapacity to forgive? Just think about it for a second. Go personal, now then go societal, go political. Time after time, it's because we can't muster forgiveness. A few years ago, Pope John Paul visited Greece, and there was great reaction among a lot of the Orthodox to the Pope of Rome coming. And they were burning him in effigy, and they were blocking him, And they asked someone about it, and they said, well, back in the 13th century, and right, I thought, back in the 13th century? I mean, I know terrible things were done, but we have this terrible memory of injustice. We can't forgive. The Middle East, now all the troubled places in the world. Think of troubled families. Think of troubled societies. It's the inability to forgive. And so here we're asking, Lord, please give us this capacity to forgive. It's so central. And lastly, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I always think the last line of the Our Father is a kind of cri de coeur, as the French say. It's a cry from the heart. Right? Deliver us from evil. There's just so many things that beset us, so many evils, physical, psychological, spiritual, interpersonal, geopolitical, all the evils that beset us. We end the prayer with this cri de coeur. It's, Lord, please deliver us from evil. Can you see now why the Church Fathers said all prayers are versions of the Our Father? The Our Father is the matrix. It's the structuring ground of all our prayers. Whatever you're praying for should fit in here. If it doesn't, you're not praying for a good thing. Jesus didn't say, when you pray, only pray this way. He says, pray like this. In other words, let this be the model for all your prayers. So spend some time in the 6th chapter of Matthew's Gospel with these familiar words. Happily, almost all of us, at least the Christians, have this prayer memorized. Spend some time today mulling it over and drawing out some of these implications.
Could someone push the top button on the right back there next to the... Thank you. All right. So, as Bishop Barron said, the Lord's Prayer can be used as a framework for all of our prayer. On the table back there, I don't know if y'all picked them up, but we have 2 handouts printed up. One is a resource guide for this presentation. If you feel the urge to look into it more deeply, you can check you can look at some of the resources that I use for this presentation. The other is a guide on things that can be included with each petition of the Lord's Prayer. So as we go through the presentation this morning, you might want to keep an eye on that and see if anything pops into your head that you might want to include into it the next time you say the Lord's Prayer. So we start with Our Father. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, the baptized cannot pray to Our Father without bringing before him all those for whom he gave his beloved Son. God's love has no bounds, and neither should our prayer. So I don't know if you remember during my presentation back in September, I said that when I briefly talked about the Lord's Prayer, I said it's not I, me, and mine in the prayer. It's our, us, and we in the Lord's Prayer. So at the same time that we're praying for the things that we need or desire in our own lives, we should be praying much more for the needs of those around us in our communities and in our world, because there's only one of us, where there are a world full of others that need our prayers. Who art in heaven. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 6 says, part of it says, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. God is above us. He is around us. He is in us. But St. Louis de Montfort said, we honor his sublimity and his glory and his majesty by the words, who art in heaven, that is to say, who is seated as on a throne, holding sway over all men by thy justice. So when we come to who art in heaven, it helps to remind us that God is not something to be held on to, something to be controlled, something to be manipulated by us. God is so far above us, and we should recognize that He is that, and that He is responsible for all that takes place in our lives and in the world. Hallowed be thy name. I believe our understanding our Father is written by Pope Francis, and he said, when Jesus teaches us to pray, hallowed be thy name, he shows us that the name of God is consecrated. It is holy. God's name is not merely transcendent and mysterious. It is intimate and personal and interpersonal. It is the basis for the covenant. And he also mentions that when we use the word of the name of God, we're calling, when you use the name of someone else, you're calling upon them. We don't all say, hey you, we say, hey tweet. When we use that name, we're calling upon that person. So when we use the name of the Lord, we're calling upon the Lord. So we shouldn't use it frivolously, such as in saying things like, please forgive me, oh my God, or Jesus Christ, as exclamations. I would even include in that OMG, because everyone knows what OMG stands for. Therefore, I don't really think that it should be used as an exclamation just in a frivolous manner, because we're calling on the name of God. When we call on the name of God, we're calling God's attention to us. And if we're using that name in not such a good manner, God will see that. Thy kingdom come. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 26 through 29, it says, this is how it is with the kingdom of God. It is as if a man were to scatter seed on the land, and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow, he knows not how. Of its own accord the land yields fruit, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. And when the grain is ripe, he wields the sickle at once, for the harvest has come. And in the footnotes for these verses, it mentions that the kingdom of God, initiated by Jesus in proclaiming the word, develops quietly yet powerfully until it is fully established by him at final judgment. So God instituted the beginning of the kingdom of God on earth during his ministry. It's been growing through the church ever since, and it will reach its final full establishment when Jesus comes again in the final judgment. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The greatest example of this is Mary. I have, over the last several months, grown to appreciate Mary more and more. It's just amazing to me how someone could say yes so completely to God. It's something that I'm struggling with in my own life, how to say yes that completely. During Exodus 90 last year, during our group discussions, I said a few times, do we not get anything for ourselves, a moment? Can I not just watch a game or read a book or something like that and not have to consider God all the time. Mary considered God all the time. And a couple of the guys, including Tweet, were like, no, it's about God. It's about God all the time. So this is something that I'm struggling with. And I keep looking to Mary as an example of how to say yes to God all the time. Actually, Understanding Our Father was not written by Pope Francis. Our Father, Reflections on the Lord's Prayer, was written by Pope Francis. I'll have to see if I can remember who wrote Understanding Our Father. But anyway, Pope Francis said, we all need to say, I believe in you, I hope in you, I love in you. May your will for good be fulfilled in me. And this is the yes. With generosity and trust, like Mary, let us say today, each one of us, yes to God. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It could also include all those things that we may not want to happen that are happening in our lives. God's will, God allows certain things to happen in our lives that maybe are not good in the way that we see them. My younger brother, he's 2 years younger than me, he was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he is going through a rough time right now. He is not a religious person at all. But over the last, I'd say, 2 months, he has been asking me a lot of questions. He's been asking me to pray for him. He hasn't told me that he loved me since we were little kids, but every time we get off the phone, he tells me he loves me. He's growing closer to God because of this. And so these bad things that happen in our lives are meant by God to bring about a greater good.
Sir?
Yes.
Just real quick on that last one. So instead of, say, it's not that we're asking for His will to be done on earth. It's more like we're accepting that it's going to happen.
We're accepting His will, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We ask that His will be done, and we accept the will that He allows to be done in the world and through us. So if God is calling you to do something that you may find difficult, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head.
Like moving back to Ohio?
Move back to Ohio. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Like move states the month before your kid's born.
That's right.
Because crazy people do stuff like that.
It is that we accept God's will for us in our lives. Give us this day our daily bread. I love this picture. This is my favorite picture. This is my daughter Isabella when she was 4. Yeah, 4 years old. We were on vacation in South Carolina, and we were at a restaurant south of Myrtle Beach called Drunken Jack's. It's an awesome restaurant. It's in Murrells Inlet, if you ever get down there. But there was an hour wait for the table. And we had our whole family there. It was my wife's family, so there were like 1 million of us. They're Italian Catholic, so they're just everywhere. But anyway, so it was in August, so South Carolina in August is pretty hot and humid. And we had been at the beach all day, and we had gone to the amusement park, and we had done a lot of stuff. And so by the time dinner rolled around, little Isabella was pretty pooped. And I was sitting on a bench outside the restaurant. We were waiting for our table. And she just comes over to me, And she doesn't even ask. She just climbs up into my lap, puts her head against my chest, and goes to sleep. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm falling asleep there too. Give us this day our daily bread. This is where God wants us to lean on Him, as a child does against the chest of a parent. St. Louis de Montfort said, "We ask for this bread today, this day," which means that we are only concerned for the present, leaving tomorrow in the hands of providence. When we say bread, we ask for that which is just necessary to live. We're not asking for luxuries. We're just asking for bread. And when we ask for our daily bread, we recognize that we need God's help every day. And we are entirely dependent upon Him for His help and protection. And who wrote Understanding Our Father? Do you have the resource guide there? Scott Hahn, thank you. He said, "A child trusts his father to provide for his needs as they arise. The Lord's Prayer teaches us to desire a child's life of humility, trust, and dependence on God. We ask not for riches, but only what we need for the day. And we are confident that God will provide it." I just have to go back to this picture. I just love this picture. She was just, and now she's 16, and she's like this tall. She's driving me a little nuts lately, but that's okay.
You just need to blow that up and print it out.
Yeah, that's right. Put it on her bedroom wall. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
You loved me.
That's right.
Hand her a copy every time she does something that annoys
That's
you.
right. That's right. She's nowhere near as much as a handful as her older sister was. She's much easier to deal with. So.
Give it time.
Yeah. Well, by 16, well, I'm not going to go into it. By 16, my older daughter was. This part here, there was hair there. It's pulling it out. But anyway. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says, in this petition, we return to Him like the prodigal son, like the tax collector, and we recognize that we are sinners before Him. And love, like the body of Christ, is indivisible. We cannot love the God we cannot see if we do not love the brother or sister we do see. So again, we have to forgive those who trespass against us if we want to be forgiven for our trespasses against God. That's why I kind of have a little bit of an issue with the way we say this prayer in the Catholic Church, because we pause between "forgive us our trespasses" and as we forgive those who trespass against us. I think it should be one line, because I believe that God forgives us to the degree in which we forgive those who have sinned against us. The Catechism also says this petition is so important that it is the only one to which the Lord returns and which He develops explicitly in the Sermon on the Mount. So in Matthew chapter 6, verses 14 to 15, He says, "If you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your transgressions." And a little earlier in chapter 5, He says, my little tab here, "Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there recall that your brother has anything against you, leave your gift there at the altar, go first and be reconciled with your brother, and then come and offer your gift." Scott Hahn said, Jesus is asking us here to live the divine life that we have received. We're not just forgiving because we believe our offenders' apologies are sincere and they won't trouble us again, because sometimes they're not sincere. Sometimes they don't even bother to say they're sorry. And often they sin against us again and again. But God forgives us when we apologize half-heartedly and when we become repeat offenders. So we forgive as God forgives, in imitation not only of the quantity, but also the quality of His forgiveness. Such forgiveness is possible only by humans who are being divinized. It's a hard word to say at 8:30 in the morning. We forgive as we've been forgiven. We forgive as God forgives. Only then we should ask God to forgive us as we forgive others. And then he goes on to say, this petition in the Lord's Prayer helps us to acquire the right attitude about ourselves and our fallen humanity. Sin is something that afflicts all of us. We all sin, and we are all the victims of the sins of others. The Lord's Prayer humbles us and forces us to confront a truth that we'd rather avoid. It can be as difficult for us to notice our own sins as it is easy for us to see the sins of others. We should make excuses for the faults of others at least as much as we do for our own faults. When we forgive, we act as God acts. We forgive others as we've been forgiven first. I worked for 29 years in the retail world. I worked at Half Price Books, and when I read this part of the book of Understanding Our Father last year, when I was writing this presentation, I was still working there, and when it came to the part where it says we should make excuses for the faults of others at least as much as we do for our own faults. It really struck me because in the retail world, you deal with a lot of people who maybe don't have the best attitude. This also happens in the service industry, restaurants and bars and things like that, which I was a bartender for a few years. We don't know what's happening in their lives. Their brother might be dying of pancreatic cancer. They might have just lost their job. They might be wondering how they're going to pay for food for their children. So when they cop an attitude with you, just try to keep in mind that there may be something going on in their lives that's causing them to be not so kind to others. And we should pray for them. It really helps when you keep that in mind in the retail world, because there are a lot of people who want it their way and no other way. Yes, Tweet.
Okay, if I can add something as well, it's not so much of the quality of the forgiveness, but it's also the quantity of forgiveness as God or Jesus have taught his disciples, that is 7 times 70 times is how
That's
often
right.
you should forgive somebody.
That's right.
So I mean, not my words, I think those are C.S. Lewis words,
Yep.
but.
That's right.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
Should we wait for questions at the end, or?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so how does this relate to Christ's death on the cross and his forgiving our sins? Does that make sense? My question making sense? Like Christ died, and so he offers forgiveness of sins, but does that coincide with this, or is this completely different?
I think Christ dying on the cross would be the perfect example, the greatest example of this. Oops, did I just hit a button? No, did open the battery compartment though.
Can I?
We would, I'm sorry,
Oh, it's me.
yes.
Wait, actually, when he was saying that, when you were just saying that too, I just thought about the 2 other sinners.
Right, yes, and you
his
had one who was chastising Christ. If you're God, take yourself down from the cross and free us too. And the other one came back at the first one and said, this man has done nothing wrong. We deserve what we're getting, but he's done nothing wrong. And then he asked Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom. And Jesus, even on the cross, when he's suffering, crucifixion was a very cruel way to die. You don't die from bleeding or anything like that. You die from suffocation, because you're when you're tied up like that, your diaphragm eventually starts cramping, and your diaphragm is what moves your lungs. So you're constantly trying to push yourself up to get your diaphragm to move with your legs, and that's why they went around and they broke the legs of the two other men on the crosses to get them to die quicker. Jesus had already died. That's why they did not break his legs. It was a particularly cruel way to die.
I just want to say one more thing too, is like, because I think there's a popular conception, it's like, well, Jesus died for my sins, so the whole forgiving others is necessary because Jesus has already got me covered. But I think that can be, but this is kind of saying like, no, like we have to be an active part.
Yes.
In that. It's not
We have to
passive.
forgive others, just as Jesus forgave us.
Yeah.
The thing that I think the entire message of Jesus' ministry was live the way I'm telling you to live, which is love, forgiveness, mercy. I think maybe the greatest word, mercy.
So I think, to your point, that the sin that we made against the divinity, right, is by eating of the fruit, the only way to reconcile that situation is to have a divinity that died for sin. So that itself, yes, that's true. But in particular, we also are called to participate in the reconciliation of the world. And if we can't reconcile, like the quote before mentioned, with our brothers, then how are we going to love or reconcile with the one that we can't see? So yes in one part, and yes on the other part as well.
I think a lot of times too, like I've talked to people about it, and they're like, oh, well, as Christians, it's just, we can do what we want, and we're covered, right?
Right.
And it's like, no.
Right.
It's like you have to live this life because you truly can't be contrite and sorry and ask for true forgiveness if you don't mean it.
That's right.
If it's like, well, I did this bad thing, I'm sorry, and I'm going to go do it again.
That's right.
That's not how it works.
You have to. We all realize that when we go to confession, some of us deal with habitual sin. We all realize that when we go to confession, we need to be completely contrite, meaning what we say when we're asking God to forgive us for our sins, and that we firmly intend never to do it again, even though it's very possible that we'll do it again. At that moment when we're making a confession, we need to, in our heart, mean with all our heart that we will never do it again. Maria.
I'm loving this. I love what everyone has had to share so far. Kind of going off of what Colton and Don were both saying, as far as, Colton said that forgiveness is this active process, and Don was saying, some people think it's like a one and done, and you're good to go. I think it's really interesting because in Catholicism we have this concept of I am actively participating in my salvation. I am actively coming back to grace, coming back to the cross. It's not, I jumped in the blood and then I jumped out and I can go do whatever I want, right? So we're actively participating, and in a similar way, we can take that and apply it to those moments of forgiveness in our own lives, those moments that require forgiveness that aren't easy, right? Because there are moments where you have a one and done, I forgive you, we're good. And then there are moments where you say like, okay, I want to forgive you, and I'm gonna try to consciously make that decision. There's a part of me that still wants to like kneecap you, right? So we're just being honest. And so it's so hard. I just want to be clear that when we say we are called to forgive others, that's not an emotion, that's not a feeling. That is, I am consciously making a decision to try my very best in my flawed, sinful humanity to see you like Christ sees you. And he saw you were worth the cross. I think you're worth kneecapping, we're gonna try to find the cohesive middle ground here, right? So it's a conscious decision that you may have to make 100 times a day, every day for the rest of your life, and you may constantly, this may be the thing that, like, you wake up every morning and it tempts you away from Jesus. You know, like, this could be the thing between you and the cross. So when we're talking about forgiveness, it's an intellectual decision that we make. Our emotions may or may not ever follow that. Like, you could pray for that, be like, Lord, if you could align my feelings, that'd be great. It may not happen. So if you're sitting there thinking, like, I'm supposed to forgive like Jesus forgave, and what's on the table if I don't is hell, like, man, is there some fireproof gear in this room? You know? But it's actually, like, the Lord meets us there too. Just so we're clear, if you're sitting there like, well, this was a nice class, but it's over.
Yeah, I am. I'm like, uh-oh.
I laughed out loud here. As soon as Craig said, forgive others as we forgive those who trespass, Liz leans over and goes, I'm screwed. I feel you.
We're all screwed.
Right, yeah. We all need Jesus. Yeah, Catholicism is not the easy road, y'all. Like, I think I told you that on day one. Just a reminder, if you were looking for easy, there are other churches, not parishes, but churches around somewhere that could do that for you.
That's right.
The Pope, most non-Catholics, the one thing they think about the Pope is, well, the Pope's infallible. Well, the Pope is rarely infallible. We've talked about that only in rare situations, but most modern popes, at least, go to confession like once a week or sometimes more frequently. And you think, why is the Pope going to confession? And with my confessions, it's the closer I get to God, the more I recognize the little things I'm doing. Like, you know, you can think of the Pope, maybe he got ticked off at somebody. Well, he's asking forgiveness for having had that anger, even though the person probably never knew he had that anger.
That's right. That's right. And I can also attest to that in my own life. I used to go to confession once every 3 or 4 months. Then it became once a month. Now I'm going once every 2 weeks, because I'm starting to notice as I get more, as I get closer to God, I'm starting to notice the little things, not the big things, the little things that I'm doing that maybe I shouldn't be doing and I should be asking for forgiveness for, and so I think that's a consequence of getting closer to God is you don't want to get too nuts with it. You don't want to. It's called scrupulosity when you start thinking that, you know, all the little things are just so horrible, but becoming closer to God does help you notice the little things that you're doing that you can correct to get closer to God. Yes?
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to share. One thing after what you guys just said, I know where I am in my walk, my journey with God. As far as confession, I am very sensitive now, and it's like I try to go once a week. Sometimes I may get there once every 3 weeks, but now I try to not offend God, because I don't want anything that's going to separate me from Him.
Right.
You know, so as you get closer, your spirit will become more sensitive. You know, but I'm 52, so I've been a Catholic since I think maybe 5, but it's been a long journey. But on the forgiveness situation, my heart goes out to you because I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. And I'm from a family of 9, so there is a lot of diversity within my family. And one of my sisters did some things to my mom financially, and I had to kind of go and take over my parents' finances. And it was the absolute hardest thing for me to actually forgive her. And I'm to the point now to where it's like, God's dealt with me is like, I'll deal with her, but you're judging her.
Right.
And I will judge you as you judge her.
Right.
And that has really convicted me, but it's still, and the thing is, I don't forget, Forgetting and forgiving are two different
That's
things.
right.
You know, I won't forget because I've learned, but when you do give true forgiveness, and I'm not a mother, and I think that's also where it's helped me to ask Mother Mary, but also especially Jesus, show me this person through your eyes.
Sure.
Because because I'm like, I don't know how in the world you can love this person. Why is there even breath in their body? When they can do something like that. So it's been a journey for me because there've been a lot of things, but that's been, I think, one of the hardest, with what our family had to endure over that. But, so you will come across those people, and it was ironic that it was a family member on top of that. So, I'll just kind of share that.
I actually have a similar thing going on in my life. My brother is what manipulated our parents financially when we were younger. I don't know if you recall, but I've mentioned before that I was an alcoholic and I was drunk for 20 years, so I was not involved in my family for 20 years. I was consumed by my own problems. So consequently, my sister, my youngest sister, my baby sister, I still call her my baby sister, she's 51. She was the one that stood up for our mom. She, after our mom died 11 years ago, she told my brother that she would never talk to him again. And she still won't talk to him. She knows what's going on. I tell her what's going on, and she's praying for him, but she won't talk to him. And I'm trying to change that. But I'm also not trying to push her too hard because her feelings are valid. So I understand completely what you're talking about. I also wanted to mention there's while Mariana was speaking, it reminded me of a song by a contemporary Christian artist named Matthew West. He has a song called Forgiveness. And there's a video of this song on YouTube where the song is kind of playing in the background, but he's talking, and he's talking about a woman, and he has the woman in the video. This woman's son was murdered by a man, and she went to the prison and started visiting this man in prison after he was convicted of murder. She eventually told him that she forgave him, and he's become like a surrogate son to her at this point. I believe he's out of prison at this point. This whole thing happened many years ago. But he's like a surrogate son. He is now Catholic. He has turned his life over to Christ, all because this woman had it in her heart to forgive him, as Jesus had it in his heart to forgive all of us. Like you said, we don't have to forget. And we shouldn't forget, because remembering helps us to not fall into the same trap as we did the first time. But we do have to forgive. And like Mariana said, it may be something that we have to do every single day for the rest of our lives. But it is something that we have to do, because Jesus forgave us. None of us are worthy. And Jesus forgave us, so we have to follow his example and forgive the others around us. Anything else? Tim?
Just to listen to all this, I guess that's the question that I ask myself is, what is forgiveness? Because when we forgive, if we don't forget, obviously God has forgiven us in Christ, but we're still going to be judged.
Right.
So exactly what is it? That's the kind of thing, because I'm like your sister. I've got people in my life who's hurt me. I can say I've forgiven them, but the realization is I would just as soon not be part of their life anymore, because it's a matter of becoming vulnerable and setting yourself up for the same thing to happen over and over and over. That's the kind of question I struggle with is what is forgiveness?
Right. And that's what I was talking. forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to set yourself up to be hurt over and over and over again.
Right.
You don't have to be friends with the people who hurt you.
Yeah. If I can add.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to love my family because there's still a lot of damage. I have to love them from a distance, which means I may call them once a month, some I may call once a week, but the pain is still there, and unfortunately with this one specific sibling, she's an habitual alcoholic, and when she calls, I know just by 3 words out of her mouth, is she in her right mind or is she in that mind? I can't talk to her. So it's been hard in our marriage over these types of things because I'm a fixer. I can fix everything. And I think that's been my hardest walk with God because I have had to step back and let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit needs to do. I can't do it. And that's been the hardest thing, me as an individual, as a person, because, and I'm going a little bit deeper, because parts of me, it makes me feel like I'm a failure because it's like, I want to fix this. Well, I'm realizing I can't. That's not my responsibility. That's not my job. So now I've chosen to love them from a distance. I love going to chapel because I literally put them at the foot of the altar of God. I can't do it because it has made me want to pick up the Bible and have a couple of glasses of wine. You know, I just can't. So for me to finally realize I'm going to love you from a distance, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. It means that at this point in time, this is the best way I can love you because there's still too much confrontation. I have a sibling right now who has been a mistress for 5 years. Every time I try to talk to her, she wants to talk to me about this person. And I am struggling so hard, and it's just like, because if that person is not ready to receive what you really want to tell them, you're wasting your breath and you're just making it more frustrating from you. So that's my hardest part right now. It's like, you're disrespecting my marriage, but the thing is, that's not where she is. She's not there. She's thinking all about what her. So for me, my recommendation would be love from a distance. Pray when you Hail Mary for him. And that would be, but forgetting and forgiving, I would say, honestly, probably another maybe 5 years. Because it's faintly that I think about what my sister has done to my parents, my other sister, but it's just a matter of, I do have to be aware of that, just in case I see these signs coming up again. It's like, wait a minute, are we going back down this road? Because I am also the person who, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and he's my balance.
Yeah, I would also say that pain is pain. So if someone constantly hurts you, I mean, to forgive them is always it's a choice. It may not be something you feel, but it is a choice. And charity, you can at least pray for them. It may also help you with the wound. But I think to her point, you may have to do that a little bit from afar because it doesn't mean that you allow someone to keep doing that to you. You just want to forgive them and work on that pain to, better pray for them. But that may mean you have to be distanced a little bit from that for a while. I mean, it's hard. I think a lot of people have someone in their lives where it's like that, and I just think God, at least I can make a choice in praying for that person. I may not like that person. I may totally disagree with the things that they're doing, and you pray, for God to change that person's heart, to be, the Holy Spirit to, convict their conscience, and you just pray from afar, and they're just like she said, God will handle that, and if He chooses for you to play a bigger role, then that will happen. But I think the emotions are always gonna be there.
Let's go here first.
I'll be quick. A lot of people have said a lot of things about it, but, you know, Jesus tells us to love each other like, you know, he loves us. Well, I've always said, you know, I can love someone without liking them.
That's right. That's
So,
Amen.
so, you know,
That's right.
there are people who've done, I think we've all had those people who have done us wrong and stuff, so it's like, I can give up that hate. I can give up that negative in me that makes me want to punish them, because it's not my spot.
Right.
Yep.
And I can give that up without giving up the wariness and the worry of it. So I can love you and I can pray for you, but I don't like you.
Right.
Go ahead.
And I don't think it's possible for me to like you.
What helps me with the choice of forgiving people is the understanding of their situation and who they are, maybe.
Right.
I read this book. I don't really recommend too many non-Bible books. I don't know. There's so many Christian books out there. It's just like, okay. But this one was really impactful for me. It was called "Don't Be Mad, Get Wise." Don't get mad, get wise. And I was like, that whole title like really intrigued me. But it was basically like, we can get mad sometimes, but if we understand the situation, then it's like, oh, okay, that's why that person did that. And I don't have to force myself to feel some way because I understand, and the understanding helps me calm down. I know that makes sense, but like,
Right.
at work, I'm a trainer and I deal with like all different kinds of personalities, and when I'm getting to know people and like, this person acts this way because of this, which helps me not to be like holding a grudge against that person, even though it's still hard sometimes.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, well, they act like this because they are very protective of this area because, okay, so I'm gonna, even when you say this to me, I'm not gonna take it personally as much, you know, so.
Right.
So, this is really tricky for me because sometimes, we all have people who've hurt us, and I know we've talked a lot here. So sometimes it's easy for us not to communicate with people who have hurt us or maybe cut them out of our life per se. But ultimately, in moments when I have kind of felt like, hey, maybe I'll just pull right back and I won't, you know, I'll pray for them separately and whatnot. I always, it always comes to me that I am a witness for Christ in their life. And if I'm behaving like I'm gonna cut them out or not, you know, communicating or whatever, it comes to me that I will give you strength to continue with this relationship and help you forgive, but ultimately we are the witness for Christ.
Right.
And how we behave and act are just so like, you know, it's just, and it's like a slippery slope almost that, you know.
Right. I had no idea this petition was gonna cost so much.
We got
Cause so
some
much
forgiveness
trouble.
to do it here. Father Tanner's next door, if everybody needs to talk after.
It's not trouble, we're
one
helping each
last-
other.
Right.
One last thought on this petition, and then we'll let you wrap up just to make sure we get all the content in, but, kind of combining what Kim was saying with what everybody else has been saying about, you know, sometimes you have to let there be distance between you and other people, but we are still called to witness, and I've got people in my life where I'm the only Christian, let alone practicing Catholic they know, right? And so it's like, what does this look like? And so the word that keeps coming to my mind from whatever everybody's been saying is boundaries. You know, I think there's a misconception in Christianity that turn the other cheek means I'm just gonna let you beat me to death. And that is not what Jesus meant, right? He said turn the other cheek, but he didn't say you had to keep standing right there and get hit over and over again.
Thanks be to God.
Right, yeah, amen. Jesus also flipped tables. We had the full range of emotions there. Thank you, Lord. But so we set up these healthy boundaries, and what that means is, okay, you in your chaos and in your own brokenness, you don't get to define my reality. Jesus Christ defines my reality. And so I'm going to set myself up in such a way that this is the way that I'm living. Like, these are the kind of conversations I have. This is the way I allow people to talk to me, or the things I allow them to do in my presence or in my life or around my kids, etc. And the door is open, right? This is my life. I've got my door open to you because I am a Christian. My door is open. And there will always be forgiveness and willingness for us to draw closer to Jesus together. That being said, I'm not going to chase you down and drag you through that door. So if your behavior is in violation of any of these boundaries that are naturally occurring because of the way I've chosen to live my life, I'm going to let you walk away. Sometimes people walk away with their behavior, even when in their words they're saying, it's your fault that our relationship is not working, etc. and so forth. But if their behavior is unhealthy or would draw us away from Christ, we don't have to run out there and get them. Now, sometimes you might be in prayer or in some kind of counseling or with priest, etc., and somebody or the Lord in your own prayer brings you to the realization that maybe you need to have a conversation with someone. Step outside your door for a second and say, I just want you to know this is what I think God might be calling me to share with you right now. You can take it or you can leave it. I'm going to be back over here, right? This is my space of health and Catholicism and where I am with the Lord. So yes, we're always that witness, and I think that we allow that witness to exist because we keep the door open. But the boundary naturally exists because we let people have free will the same way Jesus lets people have free will. And they're free to walk away, even if as they walk away, they're being real dumb about it, right? So, we got just a couple more. We're about to get through this, our Father.
That's right.
We can do it,
That's right.
guys.
We're almost
We can
done.
do it.
We're almost done, but listening to y'all reminded me, and I don't want to go into this too much, but it reminded me of when I was an alcoholic, or a practicing alcoholic. I destroyed every relationship I had. I lost every friend I had. I almost lost my family and my home. I did lose my job. And it's just reminding me of all the people that I hurt. And I often pray that those people will forgive me for what I did. So you guys are, all this conversation is a healthy reminder for me to keep praying for forgiveness from those people, not only from God, but from those people as well.
Greg?
Yep.
Real quick, especially like for your sister and family members, I think most of us have family members that have hurt us. Sometimes the most damaging thing I think we can do is we tell them we forgive them, and that just sets them off.
Oh, yeah.
Some people don't want to hear that.
So
Yeah.
you need to forgive them without telling them.
Yeah.
Because they're not, if you tell them you forgive them and they haven't done anything wrong, then who are you to forgive me? So I just got an email or a text thread last week from somebody I've been trying to help for 18 years. He's telling me to back off. I'm like, okay, that's all I need. You know, don't. And I'm not. My first thought was I forgive you, but it's like I'm not going to text him I forgive him for something he never did wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go, Greg, go.
Moving on. We were going to get out of here early.
Yeah.
Not
This is your
anymore.
fault this time, not mine, your fault.
Okay, so, and lead us not into temptation. This is one that has sparked a little controversy over the last couple of years. The French church has changed this to, and I believe it's something to the effect of allow us not to fall into temptation. The media went nuts when Pope Francis said that he thought it was a good idea. The French church had already changed it. The German church was considering it, and the media went nuts. Said Pope Francis changes the Lord's Prayer. Well, he didn't. He said it might be a good idea, but he's leaving it up to the individual bishops' conferences in different countries, whether or not they want to adopt it. I believe the translation that we use is the more accurate translation. So, lead us not into temptation, as Pope Francis says, could be misconstrued as saying that God tempts us. Well, that's not true. Pope Francis said, "It is not God who tosses me into temptation in order to see how I fall. A father does not do this. The one who leads us into temptation is Satan. The meaning of our prayer is, when Satan leads me into temptation, please God, give me a hand, give me your hand." And Matthew 14, verse 30 says, am I looking at the right one? Oh yeah. So this is where the apostles are in the boat. The boat's getting tossed around by the storm, and all of a sudden they look out and they see Jesus walking on the water toward them. And Peter wants to go to Jesus, so he steps out on the water. He starts walking, and then he realizes that he's walking on water, so he starts sinking, which I think is a metaphor for sin here, for temptation. And he says, it says, "But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.'" That's what we need to say right here. Lead us not into temptation. Lord, save me. The Catechism says, "God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself tempts no one. We ask him not to allow us to take the way that leads to sin." That was hard to say. And 1 Corinthians, yes, I did. There it is. No, I didn't. Oh, that's because it's right there. In 1 Corinthians, Paul begins by pointing out our weakness and our need for humility. He says, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man." Right? There's no sin that we have to deal with that others haven't dealt with. He said, "God is faithful, and he will not let you tempted beyond your strength. But with the temptation will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it." And then he shows us what the way of escape is. "The cup of blessing which we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread which we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ?" That's our escape. The Eucharist, right there. I will personally attest that I seem to have more strength against temptation when I go to Mass more than once a week. Weekly, Sunday is good, and I get a few days out of it, but it seems like right around Wednesday, I need to go to Mass again because things are creeping up that I don't want to creep up. Paul demonstrates that the Eucharist is our help and our hope. And what are the idols we must shun? They're the things of this world, sometimes very good things that we've come to place before God in our lives. But deliver us from evil. The only real danger, Scott Hahn writes, is the only reality that deserves the name death is evil. The only real enemy is sin. We pray for deliverance from Satan because we know we cannot defeat him in a game of one-on-one. We gladly pray the prayer of realists, the prayer of weaklings, because that's what we are. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And so I'm not going to go into this reading in Matthew here because we're kind of running out of time because we were talking a lot. Which actually, while we were in that discussion, I was like, "This is cool.
I love it.
I like this."
Whatever coffee y'all had this morning, drink that next week.
That's right. But if you have the sheet on the resources that I used for this presentation, those Bible verses will be on that sheet. So feel free to read that on your own. And then the last thing we say is amen.
Amen.
So be it. I will be there. Right? So I thought as a closing prayer, we would pray the prayer that we've been talking about, the prayer that Jesus gave us. And when we pray it, let's pray it slowly. And when we're praying it, think about the things that you might want to include with each petition. Like I said on that guide that I had printed out for us, I mentioned a few things for each petition. So consider these things while we're praying this prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
We're not gonna miss you.
Oh, you're the best. Okay, so real quick couple of things. One, just about the scrutinies. That's a big intimidating word, so let's break it down a little bit. It's one of the kind of many rights we've talked about, and it's been around for quite a while. Much like many of the other rights that we have, it's kind of gotten a little softer around the edges over the course of the last few decades. And so the scrutinies exist to help kind of act as a check-in and along the way of preparing for baptism. So the scrutinies specifically are for the catechumens. We'll all be here and kind of participate in that capacity, but they're specifically for those who are going to be baptized. It used to be back in the day that the scrutinies were a really intense process of the priest or bishop actually publicly scrutinizing you, testing you, asking you questions, and then doing an exorcism on you. And so, right, anybody who's like pea soup, right, Emily Rose, not quite like that. Probably in the old days it would have been, because you would have been like, I don't know, worshiping Jupiter or something. But hopefully none of y'all are doing that now. If you are, talk to me later. But for everybody who's not worshiping Jupiter, there will still be a prayer of exorcism, but it will much more likely not result in any kind of exorcism symptoms that you might see. It's kind of a prayer of deliverance and protection, spiritual protection. So the scrutinies are going to be kind of like the similar call and response. You'll have a little pamphlet so everybody will know what to say. We give you the pamphlet, but the idea is to unite your hearts with the words. So if you're reading it and you're like, oh, I'm not quite feeling this, that really is a point that you'd want to touch base with me about, because we're starting to get closer to the actual rites, the actual celebration of the sacrament. And so what's happening is every time we have one of these touch base, it's supposed to be a soul searching, not just checking a box to get through, all these Catholic mamma jamma things we make you do, but to actually be searching in your soul. I've been presented with these doctrines. Do I agree with them? I'm being challenged to do things like forgive people, right? Am I willing to do that? The purpose of the scrutiny before was not just to intimidate people. It wasn't to see if you're cool enough to be part of the club. It was to see, is there a woundedness here or a sin that I'm choosing to hold on to that needs to be brought to the light within the church before I am prepared for my own sake to partake in the sacraments. So the scrutinies will be happening. We'll do them in here, and Father Dando will participate. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm forgetting, but that pretty much covers the scrutinies. Questions on that? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, so the next 2 weeks that we have on here, they said mass,
Yeah.
not masses. We're
Right.
going to be in here for them
So-
at our normal time.
coming at you for this next week. I had a little pregnant brain moment where in my head simultaneously two things were happening next week, okay? Get ready for this. Pregnancy brain is so fun. The other day I cried because I couldn't decide what kind of pie I wanted. So, like in real life, that actually happened. So, also in real life, next week in my brain, what was happening was we were not having class because we are going to have the right of election. So next week in my brain, we were not having class, but we were also having class at the same time. Did you catch that? Yep. And having the right of sending, which this morning at 6 o'clock, my eyes opened and I was like, ah! it was like on Home Alone when they realized they forgot Kevin. So this morning I realized that, and I talked to Father Dan, and that's what I was doing when I hopped out for a second. I was like, hey, crazy person here, please help me. So what we are going to do is next week we will have, Greg's just dying. It's okay.
Hysterical.
Tanner laughs at me nonstop.
The
Like,
more
he's
pregnant
just
you get, the funnier you get.
crazy. It really is. Like she gets bigger and it's like all the little neurons I'm supposed to have are just going in there. I don't know how science works, but so next week we are not having class. Y'all get to sleep in, okay? But we are still going to be doing the rite of ascending. So, little whiplash for you. My apologies. The rite of sending is going to happen in the 10:15 Mass. So I'm asking all of the catechumens, especially, everybody else is welcome. Candidates, you are all welcome and invited and encouraged to come to the 10:15 Mass. Catechumens and your sponsors, I'm going to need you to be at the 10:15 Mass. After the homily, we will start participating in the specific rite of sending. I'll go up and I will read something from it's called an ambo, but the podium that's up there, Catholic words, right? So I will read, Father will read something, you will have the pamphlets and know what to say in response. I will be outside before Mass, making sure that you get the pamphlet as you come in, and so you'll know what to say and when to say it. I encourage you to get there just a little bit early so you can grab that and then sit down. I'm also understanding of the fact that maybe you didn't plan to go to 10:15 Mass next week and your schedule could not work with that. If you are a catechumen and cannot make it to that Mass, let me know and we'll figure it out. It's not a deal breaker. The rite of election, which is where we go to the cathedral, that is happening still as planned. You'll get an email from me about logistics of where to park and etc. In this next couple days. Okay?
So,
Yes.
so recap, we're here at maybe 10 o'clock next Sunday.
Uh-huh.
Sponsor and
Well, it's
candidate.
so specifically you have to be there if your person you're sponsoring is a catechumen and they're unbaptized. So I'm saying that because
Okay.
she's baptized.
Okay,
so
we still participate in the rite of sending.
you will not, because so
not at all.
what normally
Okay.
happens at the rite of sending is there's this big thing and you process out. We would all process out together, it'd be like a giant powwow. We're not doing that part. Father's just going. It's just going to be the part of kind of assenting to continuing the process and going to the rite of election. So the part where we all process out, that's not happening. So I'll have pamphlets for everybody in our little groups so you can follow along. But
So in our situation, not needed.
not necessary. If you can't make it to 10:15 Mass and you are a candidate, you don't have to check in and tell me. You just go live your best life. But my catechumens, I need to know because I got to do this like living on the fly thing that happens now that I have no brain cells. So.
So she's not participating in all rite of election.
No,
Because she's baptized.
she'll have a pamphlet if she comes.
Yeah.
You guys will have pamphlets and then you'll read along during the Mass, but no requirements of you. Yes.
Now, everybody, candidates and catechumens are going to the 2 p.m. at the cathedral?
No. So that is the same as the last announcement I made. It's just the catechumens and their sponsors, and then some of you let me know that a spouse would be coming as well. So candidates, you off the hook all next week. You don't have to do anything. You're welcome to come to 10:15 Mass. Catechumens, I made your life a little crazy, I'm so sorry.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
You're okay.
So catechumens, that's the unbaptized. Candidates, that's everybody else who's been baptized. Okay? We good? That's the, so our Q&A session turned into a forgiveness powwow. If you have, just a reminder, if you do have questions about anything we've covered or any of my logistical insanity, feel free to email me.
27?
Yeah.
It's all in class?
So from then on, all of the little mini rites will be in class. So the scrutinies will be in class.
Penitential, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What was that? The penitential, yes. I'm gonna get you a new printout for not next week, because we won't be here. I'll email you a new printout of the schedule, a new document that has the schedule on it, that's all updated, and then at the next class that we all meet, which is not next week, the week after, I will hand you a copy that is completely updated.
So do our sponsors have to be on the 27th?
For the scrutinies, if your sponsors can attend, that's great, and for the penitential rite, it's great, but it's not absolutely required. If they can't make it, we get it. Good? Yes?
Well,
Yeah.
we may want to make a clarification, on the 27th. And remind everybody that the mass is a 4:30, not a 5:30 mass.
Yes. So I'm sorry, I'm not being clear. Let me look at this
I
just to make
think
sure I'm
people
saying.
think we're going to the 5:30.
Oh, is that the 28th?
Let me clarify this.
I'm sorry.
So, no, you're okay. I'm sounding confusing. This is a previous announcement that I made that was, that still stands, which is for the penitential rite and for all of the scrutinies. All of the things outside of the normal class that are on this list are going to take place within the class. So there will not be, other than the catechumens this coming Sunday, just because of my little logistical thing.
Okay.
All of the other things where it says you're supposed to be at the mass, you don't have to be at mass, just show up at class like normal. Father Danda double checked it for me, so we're good to go for all of those. Does that make sense?
So the 27th is actually going to be done on the 28th?
Right, 27th will
In
actually be
class.
done on the 28th in class, and I'll get you that updated email. That's coming this week, and then you'll also have a printout. You can throw away the confusing other ones, old ones. Is that good? Okay. Thank you, guys.
I just missed what you said.